Raise your hand if you'd like more horsepower. Right? Who wouldn't? Who doesn't want more power, right? We love our Hemis, but everybody wants more. And today on the Dodge Garage Download, we're talking with Doug Aitken. He's the president of Prestige Motorsports in Concord, North Carolina. He is an engine guru, and he's got details on how to make more horsepower out of your Hemi. So I got to ask you, you're an engine guy. You are in the heart of the Charlotte, North Carolina metropolitan area, right? Smack in the middle of the motorsports world down in the South. How did you get started playing around with engines?
Gosh, just a love for it, all sorts of motorsports. So it started with small engines and snowmobiles up north, and of course down here had to kind of get into something a little different. So the love for hot rods kind of led us into the custom engine line, and so it kind of grew from there.
Well, and it makes good sense too, because, like you said, hot rods, and I mean, you got to have the heart of the vehicle. And certainly here at Dodge, we've talked about power for so long. And I mean, really right now, out of it, if I can maybe pat ourselves on the back, of the big three, we're the ones that are making, big, heck, I'm wearing a Demon shirt today, for goodness sakes, right? I mean, you've got Demon engines and, 840 horsepower and Elephants at 1,000 horsepower, all coming right from the factory. As an engine guy, that has to get you pretty excited, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, who wouldn't want the family car with 800 plus horsepower?
What I want to talk with you about today is the modern Hemi engine, right? The Gen 3 engines. We've sold a gazillion of these things in all kinds of flavors, from mild to wild. You're an engine guy. Guys are always looking for the next best thing. So that's why I'm coming to you. I want some tips on what we can do to make our Hemis, our modern Hemis, better engines. Can we make more power, make them more fuel efficient, make them sound better? That kind of stuff. I'm sure it's the same stuff that your clients come to you and ask for.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a ton of stuff on the market, and it's funny you say there's a bunch of those vehicles out there. I think I read something that well over 3 million or something. It's just a crazy amount. And there's companies out there that are developing intake manifolds, valve covers, coil upgrades, headers. Obviously, as an engine company, we could take your 5.7 and basically make it a 6.4. 392 cubic inches, camshaft upgrades. There's a myriad of options, just depending on where you want to go. And of course, you can always add boost as well.
All right. Since you're mentioning boost, let me just jump right into the deep end here. Superchargers or turbochargers? What do you like and why?
Gosh, really, those two totally different flavors, So the way I usually explain it to people, if you want the power on tap right now, the supercharger is the way to go. Or I guess I should say a screw type charger. So you've got two different superchargers. You have a screw type, and then you have a centrifugal type, more like a Pro Charger or Torque Storm. So your screw type blowers instantly come up on boost, and then they carry it throughout the RPM range. So makes it for, a pretty fun ride, but it does knock the tires off pretty quick. If you're looking at turbochargers or centrifugal superchargers, they're going to come on slow and then obviously get the power and big boost in the top end. So it just depends on what your flavor is.
So what about when somebody comes to you and says, let's say they've got a 5.7, right? And they say, Doug, I want to make more power. I mean, I can tell you right now, the guys that are watching this are, a lot of these guys have got 5.7s. They bought them because that's what they could afford at the time. But now they want to make upgrades to it. What kinds of stuff legitimately, if somebody came to you and said, Doug, I want the best way, the best bang for my buck, what can I do?
Well, again, there's a couple ways to go about that. Probably the best bang for the buck is going to be a stroker kit. So we can increase that cubic inch displacement with a larger stroke crankshaft and a slightly overbore on the cylinders. So That with a camshaft and possibly even an aftermarket cylinder head, or Mopar offers, a few different stages of CNC porting, you can take it well over 500 horsepower without adding a supercharger. Of course, if you want to go that direction, then we would build the engine low compression to accept the supercharger and the boost. And then really, I kind of draw the line in the 600 horsepower range, naturally aspirated pump gas. Not saying you can't make more, but we focus on it still being enjoyable and drivable. So once we crest that 600, if a guy's maybe in that 750 to 850 range, then certainly we would supercharge.
Now, speaking of technology, I know behind that door, you've got a whole, basically a big playground for engine stuff. Can you sneak us back in there and show us some of the stuff that you're working on?
Yeah, I think we have some Hemi stuff going on, so we'll take you around back and have a look.
All right, so what do you got on the on the shelf there?
So basically some of your Hemi stuff. So this here is an example of your Gen 3 Hemi cylinder head. And this happens to be from Edelbrock, so this is an aftermarket piece. It's not CNC ported, but you can get them CNC. But you will notice that the chamber is. And, it's actually great that we have this out here, because if you pay attention to the chamber, it's more of an oval shape, and it has a bit of what they call quench pad in it. And so there was, you probably know that there was a lot of controversy about, is this really a Hemi? You ever get any of that pushback or hear anything about that?
Oh, all the time. People are always complaining, that thing's not a Hemi, man. Come on.
Right. So, if you look at the Gen 2, so this is another Edelbrock casting. This is a Gen 2 Hemi head going on a 572 in the shop. So full circular chamber, and it's got a lot deeper hemispherical chamber there. Of course, this one's just a single spark plug versus the dual, but they do have similarities. This is a shallower valve angle, so they're able to get the chamber shallower and keep everything closer to the bore itself or the piston. In the case of the Gen 2, obviously the valve angle is a little different, so it has to be extremely deep, which in turn makes the piston actually pretty heavy. So technology, as we were talking before, there's a lot of great technology in that new Gen 3, and I expect more to come. So just to kind of highlight too, so we talk about quench area, they actually, this is what I would call a soft chamber. So they actually taper that. And you'll see we do that in some race stuff as well. But this is actually an example outside of the Hemi stuff, is like your older school Magnum and or LA, 318, 360 stuff. And this is a traditional heart-shaped chamber that has, a quench pad on it. So more of your wedge versus your hemispherical. But they definitely have a lot of similarities.
Do you have a personal favorite when you're working on them, from something like that, like a 318, 360 on up to from a real Hemi to a modern one?
Gosh, I really like the modern Hemi for a lot of reasons. It's obviously lighter weight. There's a reason why they call these the elephant. The Gen 2, it's just a big, really tall deck block, really large cylinder head. So, when you're thinking about doing swaps into some of your older cars, maybe they were smaller engine compartments, the old Gen 2 is really hard to fit in there. And it makes it hard to work on too. With the new technology in these, a little bit shorter deck heights, potential to make serious power, I really gravitate towards that Gen 3, and I think you'll see there's a lot more to come with that.
I've got a buddy of mine who literally lives down the street from me. He's restoring a 71 Challenger right now. That car was originally a 318 727 car, and he's got it all apart. He's done all the body work on it. The shell's ready, and he's about ready to start putting this thing back together. He has not yet made a decision on engines, but he's really leaning towards putting, a modern 5.7 in there. I'm sure you're seeing more of that, more transplants into old cars, right? Doing that whole resto mod with the Hemis.
Absolutely. From other industry, leaders and professionals, I've kind of heard through the grapevine that this may be bigger than the LS craze. So when you think of LS swap this, LS swap that, you may be talking Gen 3 Hemi. So
that's saying a lot right there. Now, why do you think that is? I mean, obviously the power ability is there, right? But just because there's just so many of the things sitting around in junkyards and whatnot.
Yeah, there's just a mass amount. They made so many of those vehicles, and now that they have to get wrecked to go into the junkyards and people to pull the motors out. So there's a lot of that stuff now that's lingering around to where guys are going to be able to do these swaps more regularly.
I know that you've got a Dino Cell down the road from there, just down the office. I mean, down the hallway there. Can we? I know you don't have a Hemi hooked up in there, but can you go show us what it's like to be inside of like at the control panel there of the cell?
Yeah, absolutely. Come on in.
That would be awesome. This is cool.
We actually do a lot of, you've got your standard gauges, but between this tablet, we can arrange whatever gauges we want on there. And then also on the laptop screen, if we're doing fuel injection tuning, all of our critical data is there, and then there's plenty on this screen that's actually all of your dyno criticals as well. So a lot of this stuff we hand built all this, and it was just for a comfort level when you're doing testing. So everything's at your fingertips. It's really easy to see. So yeah, this is a fun area. This is definitely a fun part of the shop.
If I am looking for a dyno shop in whatever town I'm in, is there, I know there's different brands of dynos and everybody always wants like big numbers, but you can't compare the same, especially because you're doing an engine dyno. A lot of shops have got a wheel dyno. So the numbers are changing between the different ones. Are they all essentially the same? I mean, I've heard folks say, well, use it as a tuning tool. You don't worry about the exact number. Is that correct? Is that a good kind of a mental angle to take on that?
Yeah, you're opening a big can of worms. But yes, in a nutshell, the number matters. In our room, the number matters to us because we're doing all of our testing on the same equipment over and over. If we were to take an engine from this room and go to another engine dyno, there's no doubt the number is going to be different, whether it's higher or lower. I think our room here, our dyno, we feel it's 100% calibrated correctly. It's very important to us that it is correct, but I think it's a little stingy. Usually if our stuff, it comes out of this room, it goes somewhere else, it's actually, we've had guys say it makes more power. Well, it really doesn't. It makes it on paper, but a lot of things go into it. Correction factors for your weather conditions, all of that stuff. Now, you mentioned from this dyno to a wheel dyno, there's going to be a lot of other factors. I love both. If we're doing research and development on the engine package, I really feel it's necessary to do it in a flywheel dyno room. Once we're done with that, then we can verify in the vehicle because you have transmission, you have different sized headers and exhaust, mufflers, underhood temperatures, and then the way that dyno is ran. There's several dynos. There's inertia dynos, there's eddy current or eddy brake dynos. They're all going to read a little differently. Some have great features that others don't. So yeah, I think to answer your question, the number isn't all that important. It's really repeatability and being able to understand, did we make a change for the better or for the worse? And obviously we don't like going backwards. So the goal is to make more and more power and more reliable.
All right. Before I let you go, I want a piece of your knowledge. I'm going to ask you two questions and they're related here. There are so many guys on so many forums, and if you can even remotely write a sentence that sounds convincing, you can sell people snake oil. I want you to tell us, I want you to say something that is absolutely useless that people are selling, something that you should just avoid it. Really, it's not going to do you any good realistically, and something that is legitimately decent that we can buy for our cars that will actually make them a little bit better. Either, both. Hit me on both of those.
Gosh, I just use a Dodge, for example. They have an air box that is directed towards fresh air. People will remove that to install an aftermarket air filter. And consequently, a lot of times the box is then removed and it's now sucking hot air from the engine bay. Chances are they make less power. But I guess it's a placebo. I spent $200 on an air filter. The car feels way stronger.
Right. Happens all the time, man. It's the, what are they? Seat of the pants, the butt dyno. My butt dyno says it's faster. All right. So then what about something that we can get that is legitimate, that is an actual performance enhancer? What can we buy that actually does work for sure?
Well, so, you know, your mainstream stuff, obviously, headers increase flow, you know, superchargers add boost. But on a small scale, I guess I go back to the air filter deal, you know, is pay attention. The idea is to suck cold air. Cold air is going to be more dense. We can put more fuel in it. We'll make more power. So I think the key there is really understanding what you're looking at and does it logically make sense? Speaking of airflow, do you remember the tornado?
The tornado. Oh, the thing that you put in the intake that had the little veins on it, right? Yeah. I remember that stupid thing. Yes.
So I don't know that I can. We never really tested it, you know, in a closed, controlled environment. But I think that's one of those gimmicks that really didn't work. But you know, air density is everything. So if you can intercool it, you can do you know, your methanol injection, even on naturally aspirated cars. That does work because you're cooling that intake charge and you can increase power. So there's a lot of little things out there that you can do.
I know we're out of time, but before you go, tell me about this deal you've put together with Holley about giving away one of your fully built engines.
Yeah, so the one in the front room we were sitting beside is one of our 5.7 liter versions, and we stroked that to a 392. And so that one is going to be given away by Holley, fully decked out, the way you've seen it. And that will come with all the electronics as well as the exhaust or headers that you've seen on it. So really good push for all of you Mopar guys. I mean, if I could, I'd sign up for it too. But unfortunately, I'm not allowed, but you can.
It's a pretty cool deal, you guys. We'll actually have the link connected on this thing. And boy, hopefully it would be great if somebody from Dodge Garage actually won that thing. That'd be great. So make sure you guys get on over there.
You should do a little syndication on that, whoever the winner is. That'd be pretty cool.
That'd be pretty awesome. I think so. Doug, this has been awesome. This is so good. Clearly, this is why you're a motor guy. You're an engine guy because you talk so passionately about it because that's clearly who you are.
Oh, we love it. I think everybody in here loves it. It's one of those things, when you love it, you love coming to work. So I appreciate you having us on the show.
And by the way, I swear it was absolute just coincidence that I threw on the Demon shirt that has, you know, the most powerful production V8 engine ever. And I happen to have this shirt on. And we were talking engines today. It was just coincidence, just to point that out. Great show. Doug was fantastic. Again, remember prestigemoto.com if you want to look those guys up and get more details on how you can win that fully detailed up Gen 3 Hemi that he's given away with Holley. So very cool deal on that one. And I'm glad that you stopped on by and spent a few minutes with us. And again, next time on the Dodge Garage Download, we're going to talk more stuff about the cars and the people that make this Dodge hobby so fantastic. Until then, I'm John Hammer, and I'll see you next time right here on the Dodge Garage Download.